You did the thing. You got the result. You worked harder than anyone around you, and it showed. And for about 10 seconds, maybe 20, it felt good. And then it was gone. Before the congratulations had even finished, something inside you had already moved on, already looking for the next thing, already calculating what you still haven't done, what still isn't enough, who might still doubt you. It's like trying to fill a glass with a hole in the bottom. You pour and pour, you work, you achieve, you prove, and the satisfaction drains out almost as fast as it arrives. And you can feel it, that quiet exhaustion underneath all the drive. The sense that you can't stop, that stopping, resting, being still, just existing without producing, feels dangerous somehow. Like if you stop, something will be revealed. And the strange thing is, from the outside, none of this is visible.
People look at you and see someone capable, driven, put together. They don't see the calculation running constantly underneath. They don't see that the drive isn't freedom, it's compulsion. That the achievement isn't coming from joy, it's coming from somewhere much older and much more frightened than that. That something is the thing we need to talk about today. Because the compulsion to prove yourself isn't about ambition. It's not about drive or passion or a strong work ethic. It's about fear. Specifically, it's about a fear that formed very early, before you had the words to name it, that your worth as a person is not a given, that it has to be earned. Think about what that means. Most children receive one of two messages from the world around them. The first message is, you are loved because you exist. You matter because you're you. Nothing you do changes that. The second message is subtler, quieter, often unintentional, but it lands just as clearly. You are loved when you perform well, when you succeed, when you make us proud, when you don't disappoint. Children who grow up in the second environment don't stop loving their parents. They don't even necessarily recognize what's happening. They just adapt. They learn, achievement is the path to feeling safe, to feeling accepted, to feeling like enough. And so they become very good at achieving. They study harder, they work harder, they set higher standards for themselves than anyone around them would ever require. And it works, in the short term. The achievement comes, the approval follows, and for a moment the fear quiets down. But here's the problem. Conditional approval is addictive precisely because it's temporary. It never fully satisfies because underneath it, the original question, am I enough just as I am, was never answered. And so the goalposts move. You thought, if I just get into the right school, I'll feel okay. Then, if I just get the promotion. Then, if I just earn this amount. Then, if I just get the recognition I deserve. And each time you arrive, the feeling lasts maybe a week, maybe a day, and then the familiar unease returns. Because the goalposts were never the problem. The ground they were planted in was. So the cycle continues. Achieve, approval, brief relief, fear returns. Achieve again. The treadmill never stops. Because you're not running towards something. You're running away from something. You can see this pattern show up in ways that have nothing to do with work or school. In relationships, people who need to prove themselves often perform. They work to be the most helpful, the most reliable, the most indispensable person in the room. Not because they don't genuinely care, they usually do, but because somewhere underneath the care is a belief. If I stop being useful, I will stop being wanted. They don't rest in relationships. They work at them. You can also see it in how they receive success. Most people assume that high achievers feel confident, that all those accomplishments must add up to a deep sense of security. But often the opposite is true. Because each achievement, as it arrives, gets immediately reclassified. It was expected. Everyone could have done it. It doesn't count. The bar was too low. The accomplishment lands, and the mind immediately moves it to the doesn't count pile. This is called the imposter phenomenon, and it's most common in people who learned early that their worth depended on performance, because performance-based worth is never stable. There's always a reason it might not apply, always a reason this particular success doesn't mean what it should. And underneath all of it, underneath the hustle and the perfectionism and the inability to rest, is a question that never gets asked out loud. Who am I if I'm not achieving? It's a terrifying question. Because for someone whose identity has been built on accomplishment, the answer feels like nothing. Like if you stripped away everything you've done and everything you're working toward, there would be nothing left. Just a person. Just you. And that, they fear, wouldn't be enough. Here's what's actually true. The fear is a fossil. It was formed in a specific environment, at a specific time, when you genuinely did need other people's approval to feel safe. When you're a child, love and safety feel like the same thing. But that environment doesn't exist anymore. The people whose approval you originally worked for, you're not dependent on them the way you once were. The fear is still running its old program, in a world that no longer requires it. The difference between healthy ambition and proving yourself is the direction it runs. Healthy ambition pulls you forward, toward something you genuinely want, something that matters to you regardless of what anyone else thinks. Proving yourself pushes you from behind. It's driven by avoidance, not toward the joy of what you're creating, but away from the fear of what happens if you don't. One feels expansive. The other feels like you're always just barely outrunning something. The path out is not to stop working. It's not to lower your standards or abandon your goals. It's to learn to locate your worth somewhere that doesn't require proof. That process is slow. It's often uncomfortable. It involves sitting with the fear rather than covering it with another achievement. It involves noticing the moments when the drive kicks in and asking, is this coming from something I want or from something I'm afraid of? The answer isn't always obvious. Sometimes they look identical from the outside, but you can feel the difference. One has a kind of aliveness to it. The other has urgency, tension, the faint smell of panic dressed up as motivation. It involves asking, what would I do if no one was watching? What would I create if I didn't need anyone's approval? And it involves, this is the hard part, practicing doing nothing. Not as laziness, not as giving up, but as a deliberate act of self-trust. I exist right now, producing nothing. And I am still here. I am still real. I am still enough. Most people who carry this wound never question it. They just keep running, and the world rewards them for it. Promotions, admiration, recognition, which makes it very hard to see that what they're running from is inside them, not outside them. But at some point, usually when the body starts breaking down, or the relationships start emptying out, or the morning arrives and you realize you've forgotten what you actually enjoy, the question surfaces. Why am I doing this? Not the surface answer, not for my family or to be successful. The real answer, the one underneath. Because until you can sit with that question, honestly, patiently, without immediately running back to the next task, the treadmill keeps going. And you deserve more than a life spent proving something that was never in question to begin with. If something in this video feels like it was written about you, please subscribe and leave a like. It means more people who carry this wound